House of Lords, House of Lords, House of... Oh, hi, yes, I was just singing my House of Lords song. I want to talk to you about the House of Lords. I'm going to talk about what it is, who sits there, what they do, but then also why other people don't like the House of Lords. I've got to admit, it's not universally popular. There are people, they're wrong, but there are people who do not like the House of Lords one bit. And we'll talk about Lords reform as well, because that's important, because it's a living, breathing thing, and it does need to change. Right, let's get stuck in. The House of Lords is part of Parliament, right? It's a big part of Parliament. You don't really see it much on the TV. You don't really hear about it that much, but it's really, really important. So in Parliament, you've got the House of Commons like here, right? House of Commons. Then one corridor, then like a big roundabout thing called Central Lobby, then another corridor, and then there's the House of Lords. Right? And this is all green and this is all red. So red is the House of Lords. And I used to tell people that you can tell what you're watching on telly because it's either green for the Commons or red for the Lords, but actually that's not true because you don't see the Lords ever. It's always the Commons. So that's how you can tell it's the Commons. So the Lords' job is the same as the House of Commons' job. They've got to keep an eye on what the government does. So all the government legislation, all the government bills go through the House of Lords. They generally start in the Commons, except the really boring ones, which start in the Lords, so the Lords can sort them out first. And they also have question time, so they ask ministers, they ask people what's going on, but it's all much more chill. They ask questions, they probe, they check. There's no time limits in the House of Lords. If they want to keep talking, they keep talking. Sometimes they break for supper. And if they break for a bit of food in the evening, it always says on the boards of what's going on, so they've adjourned for pleasure. It's slower and it's more thorough, and they go through it and they really get into the argument. And some of them are quite old. I got a bit like, yeah, some of them are quite old. And so sometimes watching the House of Lords actually live, sometimes it's quite boring. I'm really into it. And sometimes it's quite boring. But it's so important. I want boring people to be able to spend boring time making our laws better, right? I want boring people to be checking the government's actions, because that's important. And they're not boring people, they're interesting people. They're just doing boring things and sounding a bit boring. And then it gets complicated, because then we get into who can be a member of the House of Lords. Most people in the House of Lords, I think about 900 in the House of Lords, are there as life peers. That means they have been made members of the House of Lords by the House of Lords Committee. Names are given to the House of Lords Committee by the Prime Minister, by various other people, and the House of Lords Committee decides who can be a member of the House of Lords. So you get appointed whenever it is you get appointed, and then you are a member of the House of Lords for life. So it's a life peer. You never retire. You don't have to go, but you never retire. And this is the point. We'll get to some of the others in a second, but this is the point. We appoint members of the House of Lords who are experts in stuff. That's like science, okay? There's a new bill going through Parliament about science. Is it possible that no one in the House of Commons has much science knowledge or specific science knowledge? Yeah, it's very possible that none of our 650 people are science specialists. So we need someone in the House of Lords who is a real expert in science. Right? So when the bill comes through, they can be like, oh, I know what this is, and they can make it better. And so we need to have, not just one, maybe a few people who are experts in science to have a look at that bill. Those science experts don't have to come in when it's a bill about not science. Nobody gets paid to be a member of the House of Lords. There's no payment. You can get paid expenses when you turn up. When one of those scientists gets the train in from Birmingham to look at this science bill, they can get expenses for a hotel and food and transport. They're generous expenses. I think it's something like 350 quid. They're generous expenses. That's because we need to get people from far away and put them up nicely. You wouldn't want an old science expert sleeping in a hostel next to some drunken stag do the day before they pitch up in the House of Lords, would you? You'd want them to stay somewhere nice. And, you know, in London, hotel prices, if you've had to pay 100 quid to get there, your 250 quid isn't necessarily going to put you up. They get their expenses and they turn up, and then they don't turn up the rest of the time. So there might be 900 of them and only 650 MPs, but those 900 aren't there the whole time. It's a self-selecting process. It's not just the life peers. There are 92 people in the House of Lords who are there because their father was a member of the House of Lords. House of Lords used to be hereditary, right? Way back till when King John signed the Magna Carta to set up the House of Lords. Your firstborn son becomes a member of the House of Lords when you shuffle off your mortal coil. And then Tony Blair, there was a lot of chat about how awful this was. And Tony Blair in 1997 was like, not going to do that, are we? And he got rid of almost all the hereditary peers as part of his Lord's reform. He didn't get rid of all the hereditary peers to kind of hold himself hostage to make sure he continued to do Lord's reform. And then other things got in the way. Maybe his war in Iraq got in the way. I don't know what got in the way, but he didn't do any more Lord's reform. So we still have these 92. People say there's no one in the House of Lords that's elected, and they are wrong, because these 92 are elected by all the hereditary peers, and there's about 1,000 of them. All the hereditary peers that used to be there vote for the hereditary peers that are left in. So they are actually vaguely elected. They're elected by a group of hereditary peer, of male lord people, mostly. So it's not like a really good election, but it's still an election. You've got the Lord's Spiritual, which is like the Premier League of bishops. Bishops are complicated because seniority is hard to tell, but the most senior, 12 bishops, Church of England bishops, sit in House of Lords to make sure that there's a moral background, that the church gets the opportunity to keep an eye on the government. Now, I love the House of Lords. Not everyone does. The reason not everyone does, they say it's too big, it's too bloated. How can we possibly, they say, how can we possibly justify having a whole second chamber who are not elected by the people? They say that's completely wrong. And we need to sort that out. We need to just get rid of the whole House of Lords. Very few people say we don't need a second chamber. You can't have a second chamber, a second House of, that is the same as the House of Commons, because the House of Commons is going to have the Prime Minister in always. The House of Commons is where it's all going to happen, so the House of Lords has to be different. And there are various different ideas for it. Some people say we could have single term 20-year sitting in the House of Lords, and we can work out ways of making sure that the experts get in and doing all of that. It gets really complicated. If you need all the different boxes ticked in terms of expertise so that every single bill has someone who knows what they're talking about as it goes through, that's a really complicated way to do elections. It doesn't have to be in the same format it is now. We could just get people to look at stuff and vote on how they feel and send things back to the House of Commons and make the Commons think again. There's also an idea that we should have a People's Assembly, which is getting people together from the public, and the public just sit and hear things and debate and talk about things. It has to be quite well structured. In other countries, they use citizens' assemblies a lot more than we do. We're quite hesitant about it. But getting people together, I think there's a certain question of trust. We don't seem to trust people in people's assemblies. I don't think the House of Lords could function the way it is if the House of Lords was in fact a people's assembly. In fact, it almost certainly couldn't. Could it work in a different way? Absolutely. Is the way it currently works the best way? Maybe. But then there's also people who say we need to reform the House of Lords. Keep the House of Lords, but make changes. A Labour government right now, as we record, are passing a bill to get rid of the 92 hereditary peers. Some of the hereditary peers are quite upset by that, but they would be. But some other people say, we're losing some really good people here, and the hereditary peers aren't the problem. Another change the Labour government are bringing in is a mandatory retirement age after you're 80. The next general election, which normally affects the Commons, but the next general election after your 80th birthday, you will retire at. Again, criticism of that says an 85-year-old expert isn't the end of the world. When we're talking about reforming the House of Lords, when we're talking about making our constitution, making our Houses of Parliament a better place, is removing a slightly old person the number one priority? Seems strange. But the Labour Party would argue we just need it to be more professional and lively. We need people to be more involved and more engaged. And having this number of people doesn't make any sense. Let's talk briefly about what the House of Lords says Lords reform should look like. Generally, everybody in the House of Lords agrees this is what the House of Lords should look like. The House of Commons Select Committee into what should the House of Lords look like also agrees that this is what the House of Lords reform should be. It needs to be, the numbers need to be shrunk right down. We need to be clear of what the criteria for becoming a member of the House of Lords is. Because right now, some people become members of the House of Lords almost like a peerage, like becoming a sir, like as a pat on the head, which is a bit odd. Professionalise. So we end this odd expenses system and just pay people to be members of the House of Lords. It works with House of Commons, like just pay them a wage and then they can spend their whole time working on it. Like at the moment with this odd system of picking up as you go, like members of the House of Lords don't really have offices in the same way. So professionalise it, shrink it down, make it more transparent. Don't lose the good things about the House of Lords, but introduce more good things. And then we all love the House of Lords already, but imagine how much we're going to love it if they did those reforms and we got the House of Lords we want, the House of Lords we deserve, the House of Lords we dream of.